Welcome back to another episode of ROC Boys Football. The Michigan 2022 spring game just finished up, and the boys are talking about a little recap of what players stood out. Dill, I know you want to start with talking about the defensive line. It's easily the biggest question mark from not just a star power standpoint, losing Hutch, losing David Ajabo, losing Chris Hinton, but also a depth standpoint, especially at that interior position. What guys did you think made some plays during today's game, and you're optimistic about kind of filling that role in the 2022 season?
So I think the crux of it is, personally, I was fairly comfortable with Benny and Mozzie Smith. I know we haven't seen a ton of Benny, but you at least like bigger recruit, kind of a guy you kind of figured was going to be in the rotation as a key cog.
Yep.
But after that, you're looking at a very young group. If you look at just what we see now is freshmen and redshirt freshmen really behind those two. And Mason Graham is the guy who popped for me, who was like, okay, he might give us some really good snaps, especially defending the run. And the fact that he looked the part. He was huge, it looked like. And he had good athleticism and mobility for being that big of a freshman. So I'm super excited about what he can do. I thought he looked really good.
And it's rare to have a true freshman at the defensive line, especially the interior defensive line, look like he can hang with 22-year-olds. Like, you have to be a grown man to play that interior spot. You can't just rely on athleticism. Take a look at Rashawn Bunny last year, an even bigger recruit, and didn't really get much playing time, partly because we did have Mozzie, Chris Hinton, Don Jeter. But also, like, he was still kind of like a high schooler body. And now you saw him fill out that frame. I thought he looked phenomenal. But Mason Graham, it's rare to see a true freshman look that good. I thought he was phenomenal getting in the backfield, taking on double teams. I think specifically talking about the defensive line, you saw them play better in the second half when those guys, I mean, let's face it, this offensive line for Michigan, it's got like 8 guys who can play, and I'd be extremely comfortable with. And you got 4 or 5 guys who I think will be all Big Ten guys. And so it's hard to look that good against the offense of the first team offensive line. But when you saw some of the backups come in the second half, that's when you saw guys like Rashawn Bunny, Mason Graham, even Jalen Harrell, Chris Jenkins. They started making some plays, getting after the passer. Jalen Harrell had a nice sack off the edge to end the game. Chris Jenkins.
I mean, even that though, the way you're describing it, it's like you saw Mason Graham do his thing with Olatwimi, drew a holding play.
Yep. Yeah, he did.
You just see the physicality, like the ability to push guys around, use his arms to extend guys out. That's the thing I'm excited about. I think we all know Mozzie Smith's going to be a horse. He was awesome last year. He's going to have to be the leader. But I'm excited that the fact that even Ike Akuna looked pretty good at times. So if those two can really give him good reps, especially on the early downs against the run, that'd be really helpful. Because in my opinion, I think you're going to have good production from Rooks and Chris Jenkins more as pass rushers right now, just because they're not giants. I think Rooks goes about 6'5", 270 right now, so he's still filling himself out. But he did have really good moments in the pass rush, especially on the later downs on the inside.
Chris Jenkins as well. I think he's going to be a force in the interior, rushing the passer on those third and longs. And that's the story of Michigan's defense. This team is returning a lot of talent, but that one position that they're not returning a lot of talent is that defensive line. They were the best team in the country getting after the quarterback, maybe minus Georgia. How can you replace guys like the guys I mentioned, Hutch, Ajabo, Chris Hinton, Don Jeter? There's some young guys that you're looking to kind of fill in that role. Next thing I want to talk about in terms of storylines is just the offensive line, talking about what that depth chart is going to look like. I think we saw Olutuami. I think I'm saying his name right. I never get it right. He's good. And he offers, like, Vistardis was an awesome leader at that center position. Olutuami's coming in as a new face. He could have gone to the NFL draft. Like, this dude's legit one of the best centers in the country. He's an All-American last year. He offers a little bit more physicality and athleticism that Vistardis just was a little capped at physically. I'm very excited to see what that interior offensive line looks like with Zinter, him, and Trevor Keegan, because those guys are absolute dogs up front. And I think that's going to be probably the best interior offensive line in the country in terms of offensive.
Yeah, I think it's going to be better than it was last year, and last year was awesome. So.
And then looking at that tackle spot, I think Ryan Hayes is the lock for the left tackle. And then we saw Trente Jones, Carson Barnhart. Those guys are probably going to be the ones competing for the that right tackle spot. We'll see what ends up shaking out. But again, both those guys are comfortable playing. And then talking about the depth really quick before we move on. Giovanni Ahadi, I thought looked awesome. I was extremely happy with him. I have in my notes, Keegan Zinter Ahadi were just dominating for the blue team. They looked phenomenal. They were being able to run the ball. Very optimistic about guys like Raheem Anderson, El Hadi as being depth guys and potential starters down the road.
Man, Crippen. I think Crippen's going to be a very good player too at some point.
Yeah.
And, the one thing I think they might be a little thin at tackle besides Barnhart, Trente, and Hayes. So that's the one. I don't know because they're super young. Those like everyone there is fairly young at the backup tackle spots, and
we didn't see any Tristan Bonds, right? Did we see any?
No, he played a little bit. Okay. I think he was more working at the right, but that I think could be a slight concern. But I think if you have 3 tackles you can count on, you should be okay, honestly. Yeah. So
and those are 3 guys that you're confident with. And then outside of that, maybe a little bit depth concerns. The interior offensive line, though, that goes on for days. We got like 3 deep guys that are just
they're stallions.
I'm very happy with. Let's talk a little bit about the new faces. We have a ton of early enrollees and then new faces in terms of guys playing different positions. And probably got to start with Mikey Sandstro taking reps at the defensive back position. My take on this situation, we talked about it at halftime, was that I just want to see him commit to a position. I don't think I love Mikey Sandstro, one of my favorite players at Michigan, a guy that's just a selfless leader on the team.
He's a guy who you just feel like loves the program as much as the fans, which is like as much as you could ask for. That's always what I feel like.
Yeah, and if he was a guy that didn't love the pro, he probably would be transferred out because he's a damn good wide receiver. It's just a wide receiver room that's absolutely loaded. And so he's moving over to the cornerback position, which is just young. It's a good – I like a lot of the young guys. I'm extremely high on Will Johnson being that. Keontae Miles Pollard, Cody Jones, Zeke Berry. Like, very excited about those guys. But Mike Sandstro, kind of – you think he'll start at one of our DB positions?
I mean, I could see him more coming in, playing some like nickel, doing a little bit what Dax maybe did.
Yeah.
More situational guy just because I think DJ Turner, Will Johnson are going to be the guys on as consistent corners. That just seems like what you're going to get. Yeah, DJ Turner for sure. And then, I mean, Gamon Green and Will Johnson are probably going to battle it out and are going to get good amount of work. So
and his Gamon Green's brother, German Green, who
he played well.
We haven't seen much. He's been a special teamer, hasn't really gotten any meaningful snaps on the defense side of the ball. Was probably the best defensive back all day. Maybe you can throw in DJ Turner, who's just really, really good. I think he's going to be an all Big Ten guy. But a lot of new faces in that defensive back room. Mike Sandstro being the kind of the headliner that you were hearing rumblings in the spring that he was going to be there. I thought he looked real comfortable there. How about the early enrollees? Did any of the early enrollees catch your eye? I'll start with one. Obviously, we talked about Mason Graham, but Derek Moore. Like, he didn't necessarily flash for the film. He looks the part. You can tell he's like a high 4-star guy, top 100 recruit. Stole him over from Oklahoma, I believe. Like, he looks the part. He looks like he can be a good ball player. Probably just going to be a depth guy this year, but very optimistic about how he's going to develop for Michigan.
Yeah, I mean, because that's an interesting spot. Like, we're fairly deep at the D end, although we don't have the star power, but I think we got deep. 4 guys who can run.
Absolutely.
Including TJ Guy, who I don't think they were expecting a ton, but I thought he looked really good today. So, and Kayshawn Bennett. So I think you got like a fair amount of activity in that DN spot, and it'll be tough to crack it. But I don't know. Morris could very well end up getting his fair share of work, especially as the season goes on.
And then the one guy on the other side of the ball, Darius Clements, a guy that we've talked about. They've talked about all spring. 4.4 speed, big body guy, 6'3", 200+ pound guy. He had that nice catch in the end zone. It was very cool to see Ronnie Bell taking the interview. And then when that happened, Ronnie Bell go celebrate with the guys. He's a guy that I'm very excited for. Again, part of a wide receiver room that is super deep, especially with Ronnie Bell slated to return this fall. Maybe not a producer this year, but he's going to be special. Him, Andrew Anthony. You saw a little bit of a Marion Walker too, Christian Dixon. There's some young cats in this wide receiver room that are going to be good for years to come. And as fans, you're always kind of looking towards the future. J.J. McCarthy with Andrew Anthony, Darius Clements. That's a exciting little battery to think about down the road.
And, I also I know you're not a Henning guy per se, but I thought he played really well today. I think he kind of looks what he can. Like, yeah, he's probably not going to be a deep ball wide receiver, but I think if you can get him the ball, he's pretty explosive.
Oh yeah,
And he looked really good to me today. I thought he was solid catching underneath routes, which is really what he has to do, and it has to be consistent. And look good today doing it. Look good catching and running, which I kind of think you expect. But he keeps developing into like more of a steady wide receiver presence than just opposed to taking end arounds and doing it. So I'm excited to see what he has because it's valuable if he can because he's super explosive.
Because we have like the solid these three guys, Ronnie Bell, Cornelius Johnson, Andrew Anthony. They're going to be providing like the most consistent wide receiver play. Cornelius Johnson, by the way, on their preview a week ago, I was talking about maybe him not being as athletic. I got to take that back a little bit. Every time I was going back, I watched the Penn State film the other day just because I'm a degenerate. He's very good in space. I don't give him enough credit. But those are the three guys that are probably going to be the primary targets, throwing in Eric All at the tight end spot. AJ Henning's a guy that you just got to find him touches. They mentioned the Deebo Samuel role. I'm a little apprehensive about that because you got to be a special body to take the volume that Deebo gets. I don't know necessarily if we're going full Deebo with AJ Henning, but he is a guy that you mentioned. You want to get him the ball in space and let him be electric. Definitely him and Roman Wilson just provide a spark that I think is going to be very valuable in terms of explosive plays for the Michigan Wolverines this year.
Shout out, Blake Gorham was so good. I don't know if we talked about him yet, but like he looked so good today. So I'm really excited about him.
It's good to see. Blake Gorham hurt his ankle midway. I forget the game, but middle of the season, started battling back. But you never really, and even in the interview today, said I was never really 100%. I feel 100% now into winter workouts, but never really got 100%. Seeing Blake Gorham moving at 100% again, just shaking Mike Barrett right out of his shoes it's fun to watch. I think he's going to be RB1. I think he's going to lead that backfield with touches. Donovan Edwards didn't get a ton of burn, but again, he's got
the catch.
Oh, the catch. That's right. Early in the first half. He's sick out of the backfield. Him and Blake Gorham, I'm very happy on. Tavir Dunlap, he added something. I think he solidified that RB3 spot. He looked awesome. Yeah,
he did look really good. Even trying to keep back Khalil Mullings, whatever it is, and he was taking as many carries as he was, but he looked good. So
he actually didn't. Yeah,
who am I to question it?
He gets downhill fast. That was fun.
And he has good instinct. He doesn't have he didn't look like bring up like a Ben Mason when he ran the ball. It's just like, he just started running, but he didn't have like a feel. Mullins had good feel for he made some nice cuts, got to the outside when he had to, and looked good. So
no doubt in my mind he played running back in high school because he looked like he must have had some outside of reaching for the goal line and fumble and just not carrying the ball the right way. He looked solid. And then one other thing before we close out the show is talking about the quarterbacks. Obviously, J.J. McCarthy not healthy enough to play in the spring game. We still think he's going to be quarterback one. And Cade McNamara didn't really make a great argument to be quarterback one. Again, it's the spring game. I think he only had 4 drives. None of them got any traction. What's your take on that quarterback room, I guess?
You were not winning a title without JJ, so it's like the only way to step forward is to let him rip it and try to be more explosive on offense. And I mean, we just put so much of a heavy workload on Hassan Haskins last year, and he came up for us for sure. But I just don't see you beating Georgia running that style of beating a really tough defense like what sometimes Alabama will bring, or Georgia or LSU, or when those defenses are really good, it's hard to win playing the way we did last year. So it just feels like it has to be.
If you think about teams that have won the national championship or have competed for a national championship, outside of that Georgia team last year with Stats, which was just a once-in-a-lifetime defense. I mean, as long as you've been following college football, we haven't seen a defense that talented all over the field. You need a quarterback. Think about other guys, Joey Burrow, Trevor Lawrence. Like, you need a quarterback with some pedigree to win a national championship. J.J. McCarthy clearly showed that. I don't think Cade McNamara, as much as I love Cade McNamara, I just don't think he has that top-end pedigree to kind of carry Michigan over the top and maybe win the college football playoffs and national championship.
Yeah.
All right, closing out, any other guys that we didn't mention that you got shout-outs for?
Michael Barrett. he's all-time favorite. He looked really good today too in playing the linebacker spot, but I
He's
love
gonna
the
give us some
energy he
versatility.
brings.
You gotta love it. You gotta love the attitude. That dude is the ultimate competitor. Borderline, sometimes too competitive.
Yeah, but that's because you're like a coward. So you would. I'm
No.
not surprised. You don't think like, oh,
Mike
he's
Barrett will
gonna
get
take
called for that.
But you're the guy who's like obsessed about penalties, like to the point where it makes me want to throw up. So maybe it's you. You just get all wound up.
I had a feeling.
Well, because it's like, oh, don't touch him, don't touch him, don't touch. Like, come on, just like grow up.
No, Mike Barrett is one of my favorite football players. I don't think we saw Rod Moore at all. And then another guy, Keon Sabb, he only got some burn in the second half. He's going to be good. I don't know if he's going to be able to find some playing time this year, but another newcomer to keep your eyes on because I think he's got some serious athletic upside to him.
Yeah.
Trying to think about anyone else. I think we covered it all. The linebackers are going to be good. I think Junior Colson, Nikai Hill-Green are going to be just continue what they were doing.
Jordan Moran, a guy who has been around for a while, high recruit. You haven't seen a ton, but he made some plays today that makes me think like, yeah, he might be able to get some work. It's hard to say where, but can he compete and find himself on a defense that they need more athleticism and speed along with a little bit of size? Yeah, I think he could. He's a bigger body, faster, or like kind of hybrid linebacker is kind of how I see the best fans he'd have. But yeah, he made some plays and looked good, so I'm happy for him.
Yeah. Overall, it was you could tell why they chose to televise that. It was pretty lighthearted. The guys had some fun. It was competitive, but the guys had some fun. They were taking huddles, so they didn't have to show all the sideline signs. But as Michigan fans, it's fun to finally see a spring game. Jim Harbaugh's always been very close to the vest when it comes to off-season type of stuff. It was fun to see the guys come out, compete. A lot of young guys that we got to see have some nice burn. Hope you guys enjoyed our little spring game recap. Any football you can get in spring, you're going to take. I'll be watching all the Big Ten spring games just because I love it. Appreciate you guys rocking with the ROC Boys as usual, and we'll be back with some regularly scheduled NFL draft content later. Peace, y'all.